Alright, so for 2.2, which is a relationship between two quantitative variables, we're going to go through the little start of the notes here. It's kind of not as fun because we can't actually do the Barbie jumps on this setup online, but this is how it would play out as far as putting rubber bands to her feet and dropping her and see how close her head gets to the floor. So, as it says right there, how many rubber bands should we attach to Barbie so that she has the absolute most fun without smashing her head if she were to jump from the balcony and the front foyer of the school, or in this case, in our classroom. So below is the data for intro stat students, and they use similar rubber bands than we did. I mean, they use smaller rubber bands than we did. Sorry. Alright, so now we identify the explanatory and response variables, okay? So with this, think about it. What explains the response and what is the actual response? Well, hopefully you can see that our response is how low her head reaches, right? So that's our response. And what explains that is the number of rubber bands. So our explanatory is the number of rubber bands and our response is the lowest point her head reaches, right? The response is the lowest point the head reaches in centimeters. Oh my goodness. My hand is not wanting to write tonight. Alright, so reaches. And again, that's in centimeters. Okay. So now, what type of variables do we have? Categorical or quantitative? Well, with the number of rubber bands, we have a number, right? And the lowest point reached in centimeters is a number. So hopefully you can see right off the bat we are doing quantitative. So for both of those, we are doing quantitative. Alright, so I'm just going to circle it right here. Quantitative. Now, the only thing I want us to do here was to make a scatter plot and draw below. Well, I'm going to use a little help here instead of actually drawing it by hand and making a mess. We're going to do, let's use Staplet.com, okay? And I did two quantitative variables, all right? And I've already typed them in there for the number of bands that we have down here at the bottom. And then the lowest point the head reaches in centimeters is your response, right? It's your y-axis. So your explanatory is on your x-axis and your response is on your y. So now, all we had to do was plot those points from 0, 31, 35, and so forth, and it gave us this scatter plot. So with that scatter plot, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy that. And let's see, paste it in our little setup here, make it a little bit easier. Zoom it down a little bit more, make it kind of small, but we'll fit it in there. Alright. So that gave us our actual scatter plot. And the last thing we're really worrying about doing in this section here is being able to describe the display in the, describe the relationship displayed in the scatter plot. In which case, I like to use Duff's. I was thinking of The Simpsons and Duff beer, so use Duff's. For directions, unusual outliers, form, and strength. So for our direction, what direction is this going in? Is it going in a positive direction or is it going in a negative direction? So we should have direction positive, okay. Are there any outliers? Everything seems to be falling within scope here, and as well as there's nothing outside that's very obviously outside the scope of the data. So there are no outliers. Our form, is it linear or non-linear? So in other words, is it forming a linear line or is it non-linear? Is it all scattered and crazy? Well, in this case, hopefully you can see it's a pretty linear line. If you were to draw a line there, you can get right in between those dots there, if anything. So we have a linear pattern. And strength, in which case you feel it's strong, moderately strong, weak. How would you like to classify that? In which case, on this one, I would say it's pretty strong, because if you were to draw the line to go in between there, you should be almost touching every data point. So therefore they're all in line with each other. So it has a strong relationship. So again, for a direction, we have positive. For the outliers, we have none. For the form, we call it linear. And for the strength, we're going to say it's strong. Alright guys, and that pretty much takes care of 2.2 with dealing with the quantitative variables and the relationship between them. So again, you're basically taking the two quantitative data points, putting them on a scatter plot, and describing the relationship between them. Again, using DUFs, direction, your unusual outliers, your form, and your strength. And that should take care of it. Alright guys, see you next time.